Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Chaitanya and you can call me Chai. I have more than a decade and a half of experience with software development as a developer, tech lead, architect, and various other roles around designing and delivering software products. So let's get started with an overview of Azure Boards. When you open up your Azure projects uh, or an existing project in your organization, you will see the various services in Azure DevOps, uh, from repos, pipelines to artifacts. And one of the service is Azure Boards. Azure Boards, as I said, it will help you to define and manage the process used to develop and release your projects and features. So, first thing you need to know is what is the current process identified for the project that we have opened. Here I have a project code samples, and I want to understand what is the uh, process template that is being used here. To check this, I go to project settings, and here I have name, description, followed by the process which says basic. Now these are the processes that are defined at the organization level, which you can then customize as per your projects as or program or release. So if I click on basic, it will take me to the organization settings, wherein I could see the various processes that are currently defined in this organization. By default, when you create an organization, you have basic, agile, scrum, and CMMI. These are the templates that Microsoft have defined, and you get a set of work items and grouping the work items which you can start using in your projects. But in most cases, uh, you will have to customize the process as per your organization or a project. In order to do that, you will have to create a new inherited process, uh, since you cannot customize the default process. More on this on my upcoming videos, specifically talking about how to create a new process and customize the same. So going back to the project code samples, now let's quickly go through a list of features that are available and how you can use them as a Scrum Master or a project manager. So the first thing is what is known as work items. So anything that you do in a project can be tracked as a work item. It could be an epic, a feature, a support ticket, or test case, testing. Anything that you do could be tracked as a work item. And under work items, you will see the the list of work items defined by your teams, all the teams, and part of your project. You'll be able to filter them based on the type, whom it is assigned to, and details. This is more like a list of all the work items that are currently in the project, where irrespective of its status or whether it's part of the current release or not. Boards are basically your Scrum board or a sprint board, which are part of your team. So you may have multiple teams in your projects, and this is where you will see the status of the work items as per the team that you selected. So if you see here, I've selected a code samples team, and I'll be able to see all the issues and epics that are currently being managed by this team. So if you once I select epics, I see there's one epic which is under doing state. You will be able to modify, customize these boards. Again, more on this on my upcoming videos. This is just an overview for you to get to know which one to use when. So boards is what you will use generally on a stand up or a weekly sprint planning and sprint activities to check where are we with respect to the epics and the stories. Backlogs backlogs are basically the work items which are not yet picked up, but they're part of your product feature or sprint releases. So this is different from the work items that we saw, wherein you see only those which are not yet planned or not yet completed, which are generally in the new state. So your product owners or business analysts would be keep adding the product backlogs, which you can then pick up in your boards and sprints. Sprints are basically the current sprint and the tasks that are defined for the sprint. So again, the sprint is where you will see the task level details and the tracking, and sprint you will see up to a story level. And if you want to track on a stand-ups the current task that the developers are working on, the team is working on, this is the place where you'll see the list of tasks that are assigned and the status of it. More about customizing this in the future videos. Queries are something that is very useful for you as a Scrum Master or a project owner, wherein you will be able to define queries to track your projects using very good looking dashboards and numbers. And it becomes easy for you to report the issues or report the status of the project or the release to your stakeholders easily. We will cover this in detail when I create a video on dashboards and how to use dashboards. And finally, a delivery plan is something that you will use to define or showcase the roadmap for your program. So this delivery plan can be across projects, across programs. So if you have an organization with 10 projects running, you can have one view of all the projects, the dependencies across the teams, the programs, and the projects in one view. That will help your stakeholders and your senior management to get an overview of what is planned, where are we, and how are we going forward. So this is a kind of an overview of what all things we can do in Azure Boards. We will get into details on each and every section in my upcoming videos and sections, and this should give you an overview of Azure Boards and how to get started. So let's get started by understanding how to check the current process defined in your projects, and then look into detail of how to customize and create a new process. So going back to the code samples, now this is a project which I've already created, and now if I want to understand what is the process used for this project, right? I have to go into project settings and go into the process section, which now it says basic. So when I go to the basic process, it takes me to the organization settings, wherein I'll be able to see all the process that are defined right now in the organization level, which means that when I'm creating a new project, I will be able to create a project using any of these 5 processes, and accordingly the project process would be set up as per the configuration here. So by default, when you have an organization Azure DevOps, basic, Agile, Scrum, and CMMI are part of the default process defined by Microsoft. Now, it so happens that you will generally have to customize the process as per your organization and as per your project. To do that, you can create an inherited process from the existing default process. So let's say if I go into the Agile, here when I go into the Agile process, you see the standard Agile terminologies like user story, epic, feature, issues. Now, in my organization or my project, I would have defined a custom work item which I want to track. It could be the unit testing effort, it could be non-functional requirements. So this is a work item which I want to track, or the support ticket which comes in the issue. So I want to track. So in order to go ahead and create a new process from Agile as the base, I will go here and I'll say create inherited process. So here I could go ahead and give a name. I will call it as agile underscore my process. And you could define the process, give a details about why you're creating it, how it's relevant to your organization or the project. And finally I can go ahead and create. So once I create, I again have the basic basic template as per the agile process which I've used as a base. Now, once I have this process, I can start customizing various fields or the work item. Example, I could go ahead and create a new work item, give a name as per my project activities of my project settings. I could go ahead and define the backlog items. I can group the new work items that I've created into different groups, which will eventually start appearing in your boards and sprints in the project boards. And you can also look at customizing each and every field, the state, the rules, everything in detail. So again, I will be doing a separate video focusing on each and every section. How do you create a work item? How do you customize the layout, states, rules, and details? But for you to get started with respect to Azure Boards and process, the key thing for you to know is the process in Azure DevOps are configured at the organization level, which you can then create inherited processes. You can I can go ahead and create an inherited process from here, right? And from the default processes, I can go ahead and create multiple inherited process, and then go ahead and customize the work items, customize the backlogs, the each and every field in my projects. So this is the first step towards having the Azure boards to be customized for a program, project, or an organization. So let's begin with to understand how to create a work item and the overall steps and the process. So here I have I'm in the organization settings, wherein I have created a custom process called agile underscore my process, which is inherited from the default agile process from Microsoft. So when I get into the agile my process, you will notice there are default set of work items which are relevant to the agile process and terminologies like epic, features, stories, test case, task. Now let's say you have a scenario wherein while developing the project and the releases, you will also have to support the production issues or various other testing activities in a higher environment such as staging, load testing, or penetration testing. So what if you want to track the various efforts spent by your team focused on testing on higher environments? So again, as I said, testing in higher environments, it could be load testing, penetration testing, or security testing, or various other ways, other testing we do to validate the not only the features but its performance, security before it go into production. So so to track this, you could create a new work item type, which you can then start creating uh, the stories or the work item of that type at the project level and assign it to the various team members and track the time. So in order to create this work item, I will go into create a new work item, and I'll give it a name as production QA, quality assurance validations. So create, or let me just call it as quality assurance. So this is a generic work item type which I want to use for tracking overall time spent by my team on various quality assurance, not only at the release level but at the production level. So you could go ahead and give a description, track all efforts spent with respect to QA in multiple releases, multiple environments. You could select an icon for your based on some default settings. You could also identify and put an icon, and select the color which you want to pick up, right? So now with these details, I could go here and go back to Agile My Process. Now you will see there is a new work item created called quality assurance, which now I can use to go ahead and add them into various backlog level. If you want to track this at your sprint level or a board level, you will be able to add a new backlog item, backlog portfolio, and then assign quality. Example, I can still say quality backlog, right? And then I will just let me select something, and I'm saying the quality assurance is the something part of this backlog. So once I do this, I have the quality assurance backlog, which has a work item type of quality assurance. Now when I create a new project with respect to using this my agile underscore my process, I will be able to create various projects, work items based on that. Let me go ahead and quickly create a project. So I'll go and say new project, and I'll give a name demo process. And here if I go down, this is where I have the option to select which is the process I want to use. So I'll select agile underscore my process and create. So once I have this project created, if I go back into the boards and say work items, here I will be able to see the quality assurance also as one of the tasks, which I can go ahead and give a title, give it, and just like any other work item, I can go ahead and uh, track the effort, the time spent by the team on quality assurance across environments. Again, we will be able to customize whatever you see here. We'll be able to customize and do, which I'll cover in my next video. But this is a process for this is a starting point for you to define the work item types for your project and customize the Azure boards to accommodate your work item types. So let's begin with understanding the process and the steps involved in creating custom fields for the work items in Azure Boards. So in the previous videos, we created a custom process. If I go back to the projects, we created a process called Agile My Process. And in Agile My Process, we created a custom work item called Quality Assurance. To get to know the steps for this, please click on the links below to view the videos related to creating custom work item process and work item types. So now let's say now we also created a project based on Agile My Process, wherein I'm able to go ahead and create a new quality assurance type of work which you can now track. Example, I want to say load testing for staging environment, and I want to assign it to somebody so that this particular effort spent on load testing for the staging environment is tracked and both from a effort point of view and the delivery point of view. So now while you are tracking this, you may come across the scenarios where or questions from various stakeholders like what version of release are we testing in this particular work item? When we say load testing for staging, is it for the current release, the upcoming release, or what is it only for the front end, back end? So various scenarios or questions would come in when this is a more load testing for staging environment is a more generic work item, but we want to have attributes which will help us identify this work is related to staging, it is related to release, say, version 1.2 of a product, and it also is related to which section of the application or which module of the application is focused on this load testing. So for you to provide this information, you will have to have a mechanism to uh, provide the attributes at the time of creating the work items or managing the work items so that you can report back on this. So to achieve this, you will have to go ahead and create a set of custom fields that will specific to your need and use that to report. So to create these work items, I'll go back to the organization settings and process, and I'll go back to Agile, my process, and the quality assurance. So by default, these are the fields. By default, you get the description of the work item and with standard settings. Now, in case of a quality assurance work item type, which is not involved in any coding, it doesn't make sense to have a deployment development kind of a section. So you can also customize what is the view of the work item for your different users and ensure there is no clutter in the data and only the relevant data is displayed. So in case of quality assurance, I can hide the deployment section. I can also hide the development section. I will still need the related group. Now, as per our initial discussion, we will need to track two additional attributes of quality assurance, which will indicate as the release or the version of the application it is this for the work item is for, and what section of the module or what module of the software this is focused on. So for us to do this, we will go ahead and create two work items, call it as the release version and the module. So before we go ahead and create a new field, you could also create various subgroups to help categorize the fields that you want to display. So here I would specify, the QA attributes as a new group, right? Or I'll say release details, right? I'm basically saying that this group will give you information about the release and attributes related to release of this work item. So and it is asking you how do you want to, which page you want to display. I'm saying display it in the details page, and I'll keep this column as default. Now I have here the release details, which doesn't have any sections. Now you can start adding the fields for this existing group. Now I'll click on new field. So again, for a given group, you can add an existing fields into the group. So example, I may want to add start date into the group so that I know when is this work item has started or will start. I can also want to add completion end date. I'm not sure what is the field. So let me close date. So I'm going to add two fields, one which will tell me when this is going to start and when it's going to end. Now I will go ahead and create two more fields, which is now I'm not using an existing field, but I'm creating a new field. I'll call it as version details version, or I'll call it as release version. And here you can specify the type of the field. It could be the standard, it could be a checkbox, radio button, date time, a simple number, and things. So I'm going to select a pick list, or because it's a version, I will just say it is a simple string, single line string. Okay, I will say provide details of which version this work item is for. So I'm going to add a new field here, call it as release version. And now I'm going to add one more field and I'll call it as affected module. Now here I'll select a pick list. Now I can here again, I can say front end, I will say API, database. So what I'm basically specifying is this particular load testing is focused on API load testing, database, or front end. So I'm going to specify or track my team's efforts focused on individual types. So now once I have this information, so what I've basically done here is I've removed a couple of tabs which I don't see a need for this type of work item, and I've created a new group called release details, added a couple of existing fields and created two new fields as per my requirement. Now with this setting done, if I go back to my project, we created this project before adding the custom field, right? But now once I go back to the board and try to create, go back to my load testing for staging development, and here you will see the new section called release details, wherein I'll be able to specify the start date, the end date, specify the release, example I'll say v 2.4, and which it is focused on database testing. So once I do a save, I have the information, additional information about this work item, which talks about which version it is affecting and what module. So imagine you have multiple work items of type quality assurance and even for each release for different modules. Now with this information, you will be able to create a query or a report which will give you an indication of how many work items are there for release 2.4 on load testing or quality assurance, how many are in databases and various other uh, factors. So this is the process, or this is how you can go ahead and create a work item, group the fields into a group, into a custom group or an existing group, and remove the clutter on the work item view so that the team is focused on what information is required and focus on delivering your project or release. Let's get started with states. So in the previous videos, we have a custom process and we have created a custom work item type called quality assurance. And we also understood how to create a custom fields. In this case, we created a release version and affected module, two custom fields to track the work item attributes in detail. So every work item also has a status, which is a state of the work item. By default, you have new, active, and closed. Though it provides a simple state of whether it's new, probably means you're not yet started. Active is you're working on it, and closed it you're done. But you will need uh, you will need a more granular approach in a project to ensure it is tracked at various states. For example, in a quality assurance, you may have dependency on another team, or you're blocked because of, let's say, lack of data, or you are blocked because of environment issues, right? So it would make sense to have various states to be defined on these scenarios, which will help you to track how much time your team is blocked because of something, how much time your team is working on an issue on a quality assurance, but they're waiting for data to be received. So various or to a release to be made. So various states will help you to give those metrics to know where your team is doing good, is not doing good, and accordingly optimize your processes and your steps. So let's look at how do we go ahead and modify the states. And let's say I want to have a state which is new. in progress, blocked, and waiting for data, and then finally closed. So going back to project settings, I'll go into my agile my process and get into the quality assurance. So here we have the layout, and we going into the states tab, you will see the default three states, new, active, and closed. So they're grouped under proposed, in progress, and completed. We will not be able to customize the grouping. So example, proposed, in progress, completed cannot change, but you can have multiple states in each of the group. So when you go ahead and say new state, first thing is you will have to provide the name. Example, I would say in progress, in progress, and what is the state category it belongs to. So I'm saying it is belongs to the in progress. So I'll go ahead and create. So you see the in progress. Now I will go ahead and delete active, as it might be, it will be a duplicate. So remove. So similarly, I will create one more called in planning, which means that I'm still planning the overall assurance or the details before I can get into the state testing. So I'll put that under proposed, which means that it's not yet started, but I've started to look into it. So finally, I'll add one more called blocked, and it will be grouped under in progress. And I'll create one more called waiting for data. So this is to give an indication that blocked means you're completely blocked. You're not waiting anybody. You're just blocked because of access infrastructure. Waiting for data, you're waiting for the release team, or better we rename it to waiting for release. Generally, it so happens. Let me delete. I'll remove this, and then I'll say waiting for release, which means that I'm waiting for the development team to make a release so that you can do your quality assurance. So now with this kind of a state, you will be able to define and create reports to indicate how much time each work item is in progress state, blocked state, waiting for release, and accordingly you will know where you have to optimize the process to ensure the release is going smooth. So let's go ahead and look at the rules and how do we define and understand more about organization level rules. So just a quick wrap up, in some of my previous videos, we have created a new custom process called agile _ my process. We created a work item called quality assurance, created some couple of custom fields, and finally we created a custom states. So now I'm in the project which uses the agile _ my process, and I have a work item type called quality assurance, wherein we have defined the custom fields and also custom states here in progress, in planning, blocked. So now we will look into how we can create custom rules for this particular work item type. Now, whether the rules are applicable or useful is when a new work item is created, you may want it to be assigned to your lead or your main developer to ensure he or she is aware there's a new work item. So the scenario could be your business analyst or a product owner creates a work item that gets assigned to your scrum master or a tech lead, so that he or she then decides uh, uh, to be assigned to other developers, or he plans to pick up in the next sprints. So this will ensure the gap or missing the requirements or the features, as it will not be in the backlog and people may not be aware. So going back to the agile _ my process and going into the quality assurance, and I'll go into the rules. So as I said, the rules are at a work item level, not specific to a project. So it wouldn't make sense to create uh, a rule which is specific to a project. Example, you will have multiple projects running the same process. You'll have different Scrum Masters for each. So it wouldn't make sense to uh, create a rule which says whenever a work item is created of this type is created, assign it to say Chaitanya, which means that irrespective of the project, it will always get assigned to me, which wouldn't make sense because I may not be part of all the projects. So avoid such rules and create rules which are very generic or um, you know not very specific. But unless if you have a custom field, which we'll see now, sometimes it would make sense to write rules which are at a org level. So example, let me give assign to example either assign it to tech lead. So what I'm going to do is whenever or I'll say QA right? So I'm saying QA lead. Now when a condition, so what is the condition is these are the various conditions. When a state is changed or when it goes to a particular state, we could various conditions what we have. So what I'm going to select is the value of a particular property. In this case, affected module, or let me say release version. Now here I will say V2 2.4. So what I'm basically saying is if whenever a condition occurs that a particular um, work item is created for a release version 2.4, this action would be triggered. So what I could do here is I can go ahead and set the value of assign to say myself. Now in this scenario, in generally what happens is so generally what happens is every release you will have the release manager who is specific to that release. So this rule would still make sense, or you will have a QA lead who is specific to every release. Or if you have that scenario, I'm basically saying if this QA item is created for release 2.4, then assign it to Chaitanya, or else it could be somewhere else, someone else. So once I do this, uh, now the rule is created. Now if I go back and check the rules, they have one rule. So now let me go back to the project and let me work item. There's a load testing for staging. The current release is, okay, it's already 2.4. So let me assign it to, so I'll save it for now.